Before you chase wealth, success, or the life you keep imagining, you need to understand something most people never realize until it's too late. Because what if I told you that the moments you call bad luck are actually signals? What if the delays, the losses, the isolation, and even the confusion in your life right now are not against you, but preparing you for something bigger than you can see? Most people quit right before their breakthrough, not because they weren't capable, but because they misunderstood the process. They thought life was rejecting them, when in reality, life was refining them. And here's the truth nobody explains clearly. Before wealth arrives, before doors open, before everything finally starts to work in your favor, there is always a hidden phase. A phase where nothing makes sense, a phase where comfort disappears, a phase where you start questioning everything, including yourself. But that phase is not your ending, it is your preparation. So if you are watching this right now feeling stuck, confused, or like nothing is working no matter how hard you try, don't scroll away, don't turn it off, and don't underestimate this moment, because what you are about to hear might completely change how you see your struggles, and more importantly, how you see yourself. Stay with me until the end, because by the time this message is over, you will not look at your current situation the same way again. When obstacles begin to repeat themselves in a person's life, it is easy to interpret them as rejection, failure, or a sign that something is not meant to be. But in many cases, repeated obstacles are not a wall stopping you, they are a process shaping you. Life does not randomly block progress without purpose. Instead, it often creates resistance to develop qualities that success will later demand. When a person is being prepared for a higher level of responsibility, wealth, or influence, the path rarely becomes smoother. It becomes more demanding. This pressure is not designed to destroy ambition, but to refine intention. It forces a person to slow down, reconsider direction, and develop inner strength rather than relying on external ease. Many individuals quit during this stage because they misunderstand the purpose of struggle, assuming that difficulty means denial, when in reality, difficulty often signals development. Each repeated setback builds emotional endurance, teaching patience in a way comfort never could. It trains the mind to stay steady under uncertainty, to think clearly when outcomes are not immediate, and to keep moving even when results are delayed. Without this training, success would become unstable, because anything built without resilience cannot sustain pressure once it arrives. Obstacles also serve as a filter, revealing which desires are temporary and which are deeply rooted. When something is truly aligned with a person's purpose, repeated resistance does not eliminate the desire, it strengthens commitment. On the other hand, shallow goals tend to fade when faced with consistent difficulty. In this way, challenges are not only shaping character, but also clarifying direction. There's also a deeper layer to repeated obstacles, where they protect a person from entering opportunities they are not yet prepared to handle. What appears as delay is often timing being corrected, ensuring that when success arrives, the individual has the discipline, awareness, and emotional control required to sustain it. Many people only recognize this pattern in hindsight, when they look back and realize that what once felt like failure was actually preparation for something far greater. The struggle was not against them, but for them, building strength, focus, and maturity that could not have been developed through comfort or ease alone. When a person begins moving toward a higher level of achievement, one of the earliest and most misunderstood signs is a phase of isolation, where relationships shift, conversations lose depth, and familiar environments no longer feel aligned with the person they are becoming. During this stage, it can feel as if life is pulling them away from people they once felt close to, but in reality, it is a gradual process of alignment, where distractions are removed so focus can be developed. The noise of social approval begins to fade, and in its place comes silence, a silence that initially feels uncomfortable but slowly becomes the foundation for clarity. Many people misinterpret this phase as abandonment or failure, when in truth it is a restructuring of identity. The individual is being positioned away from environments that reinforce old habits and toward a mental space where new thinking can develop. In isolation, a person is forced to confront their own thoughts without external validation, which builds emotional independence and self-trust. This period also reveals how much of previous motivation was dependent on external influence rather than internal conviction. Without constant social interaction, attention turns inward, and this inward focus becomes the birthplace of discipline, creativity, and long-term vision. It is often in solitude that deeper ideas form, because the mind is no longer distracted by constant comparison or unnecessary noise. At the same time, Relationships that are not aligned with growth naturally begin to fade, not always through conflict, but through distance and changing priorities. This can feel painful, but it is part of a necessary refinement process where only connections that support evolution remain relevant. The person may feel misunderstood as their goals and mindset begin to separate from those around them, creating a gap that cannot be easily bridged. However, this gap is not a loss, but a sign of transformation, indicating that internal growth is happening faster than external circumstances can keep up. Over time, what once felt like loneliness becomes a space of strength where self-reliance is built and mental clarity becomes sharper. And within that quiet space, new identity begins to form, shaped by discipline and repeated reflection that allows the mind to detach from old patterns and begin recognizing opportunities that were previously invisible due to distraction and emotional dependency, while creating a stronger internal compass that guides decisions even when external validation is absent, and the individual starts noticing that solitude is not emptiness, but a training ground for clarity, where thoughts become structured and focus becomes sharper as distractions fade away and awareness expands into deeper levels of understanding that shape future decisions and direction, without requiring external approval or constant reassurance yet. There comes a stage in a person's inner journey where something begins to shift quietly but powerfully inside the mind. A feeling that is difficult to explain to others because there is no visible reason for it in the external world. Life may appear normal on the surface, yet internally there is a growing sense of dissatisfaction with the current level of living, thinking, and identity. This inner urge does not always come from a specific event or failure. Instead, it rises like an unexplained awareness that the present version of life is no longer enough. The person starts feeling pulled toward change, growth, and expansion, even without a clear roadmap or guarantee of success. It is not a temporary emotion, but a persistent pressure that returns again and again, especially in moments of silence, reflection, or routine living. This feeling often creates discomfort because it challenges stability, making old habits feel too small and familiar environments feel limiting, even when nothing has visibly changed around them. The mind begins to question choices that were once acceptable, and ideas that once felt impossible start appearing necessary. This internal calling often pushes a person to think beyond safety, to imagine a different identity that does not yet exist in physical form. It can manifest as curiosity about new skills, financial independence, entrepreneurship, creativity, or personal reinvention, even when there is no external encouragement. What makes this urge powerful is its consistency. It does not disappear easily, even when ignored or suppressed. Over time, it begins to influence decisions, priorities, and attention, slowly redirecting focus away from comfort and toward possibility. Many people mistake this phase as confusion or restlessness, but it is actually a sign of internal evolution, where the mind is no longer aligned with its previous limitations. The person may find themselves losing interest in conversations, routines, or environments that once felt normal, because their inner awareness has already stepped into a different level of thinking. This creates an invisible tension between who they are now and who they are beginning to become, and this tension is what drives action, learning, and exploration. Even fear becomes part of this process because stepping into something unknown naturally brings uncertainty, yet the inner voice continues to push forward, refusing to settle back into old patterns of thinking and behavior, while constantly expanding awareness of what might be possible beyond current circumstances, shaping decisions in subtle ways that eventually begin to influence direction, focus, and ambition, as the individual starts noticing opportunities that align with this internal shift and begins questioning long-held assumptions about limitations, identity, and potential in ways that gradually reshape how life is perceived and approached without immediate clarity of destination. There is a stage in a person's life where what once felt stable begins to lose its sense of security, and familiar structures that once provided comfort start to feel uncertain, unpredictable, or even unfulfilling. This shift often arrives gradually, without warning, as areas of life that were once dependable begin to change shape, such as routines that no longer feel productive, environments that no longer inspire growth, or opportunities that suddenly stop responding the way they used to. What makes this experience difficult is not just the change itself, but the emotional attachment built around that comfort, because human nature tends to find safety in repetition and familiarity, even when that familiarity is no longer aligned with progress. When this sense of comfort begins to break down, it can create confusion, resistance, and internal conflict, as the mind tries to hold on to what is fading, while life is naturally pushing towards something new. This process often feels like instability, but in reality it is a transition phase where dependency on old structures is being replaced with the need for adaptability and self-reliance. The loss of comfort forces a person to pay attention to what they might have ignored for a long time, such as hidden dissatisfaction, untapped potential, or unexplored directions that were previously avoided due to fear of uncertainty. It is in this stage that the illusion of permanent security begins to dissolve, revealing that stability was never truly fixed, but always temporary and conditional on circumstances. As familiar supports begin to weaken, the individual is pushed into a position where decision-making becomes more conscious, intentional, and independent, rather than automatic or habitual. This disruption also develops resilience, because when comfort is removed, the mind learns to function without constant reassurance, building emotional strength in the process. The discomfort that arises is often mistaken for loss, yet it is also a form of release from patterns that may have kept growth limited, even if they felt safe. During this phase, priorities start to shift, and what once seemed important may begin to feel secondary as deeper questions about direction, purpose, and capability emerge more wrongly. The mind starts adjusting to uncertainty, learning to operate without guarantees, and slowly developing a different relationship with risk and change, where unpredictability becomes part of movement rather than something to avoid. And in that space, old definitions of success, stability, and control begin to loosen their grip as new possibilities start forming quietly in the background of thought without fully taking shape yet. There is a powerful stage in personal development where a person begins to experience an unusual and often sudden hunger for knowledge, self-improvement, and deeper understanding of life. And this shift does not feel forced or temporary, but instead feels like an internal demand that keeps growing stronger over time. Books that once seemed boring begin to attract attention. Ideas that were once ignored start to feel important. And conversations about success, discipline, money, mindset, or personal growth suddenly carry a deeper meaning than casual entertainment or distraction. This hunger does not always come from external motivations such as teachers, mentors, or circumstances, but instead arises from within, as if something inside the mind has awakened and refuses to remain at a surface level of thinking. A person may find themselves naturally drawn toward learning skills they previously had no interest in, researching topics they never considered before, or observing successful people with a completely new level of curiosity and attention. Even small pieces of information begin to feel valuable, as the mind starts connecting dots between knowledge, opportunity, and personal transformation. What makes this phase significant is that it changes the way time is perceived, because moments that were once spent on distraction or repetition now begin to feel like missed opportunities for growth, creating an internal pressure to use time more wisely. There is also a noticeable shift in identity during this stage, as the person no longer feels satisfied with simply existing at their current level of understanding, and instead begins to imagine a different version of themselves who is more capable, more disciplined, and more aware. This curiosity often becomes self-sustaining, meaning the more a person learns, the more they want to learn, creating a cycle of expansion that gradually pulls them away from old habits and into a new pattern of thinking. It can also create a sense of urgency, as if there is limited time to evolve, which pushes the individual to seek information with greater intensity and focus. At the same time, distractions that once felt enjoyable may begin to lose their appeal, not because they disappear, but because the mind starts recognizing their lack of long-term value compared to growth-oriented knowledge. This transformation is not always comfortable, because it challenges existing beliefs and forces the person to confront what they do not know. But it is precisely this discomfort that fuels progress and expansion, shaping discipline, sharpening awareness, and building a foundation for future decisions that are guided more by understanding than impulse, while gradually expanding mental capacity and shifting priorities toward continuous learning and deeper exploration of ideas that influence identity, direction, and long-term potential, and it begins to reshape the way a person sees. There comes a stage in life where certain opportunities that once seemed perfect begin to fall apart without a clear explanation, and at first this feels frustrating, confusing, and even unfair, because the mind naturally assumes that what is visible and desirable should also be what is meant to be. However, when these doors start closing unexpectedly, especially the ones that a person emotionally invests in or strongly desires, it often signals a deeper process at work that is not immediately visible in the moment. Instead of being random loss, it can represent a form of redirection where life removes something, not because the person is unworthy, but because the timing, environment, or alignment is not suitable for their future growth. Many people only recognize this truth later, when distance from the situation allows clarity to form, revealing that what seemed like rejection was actually protection from outcomes they were not yet prepared to handle. Sometimes an opportunity may look beneficial on the surface, but beneath it may exist challenges, limitations, or distractions that could have slowed long-term progress or pulled the individual away from their true direction. When such paths close, it forces the person to pause, reassess, and sometimes even rethink their identity, goals, and methods, which creates space for better alignment with future opportunities that are more suited to their development. This process also teaches a critical form of emotional resilience because it removes dependence on external validation and outcomes, encouraging the individual to build trust in timing rather than immediate results. In many cases, the closing of a door also strengthens clarity by eliminating choices that would have divided focus or created long-term confusion, even if they initially appeared attractive or secure. Over time, the individual begins to notice that what was removed is replaced with better direction, stronger opportunities, or deeper understanding of what truly matters. But this realization only becomes visible after reflection, rather than during the moment of disappointment. This stage also develops patience because it challenges the belief that progress must always be direct or predictable, showing instead that life often works through unseen adjustments that prioritize long-term alignment over short-term satisfaction. As these experiences accumulate, the mind begins to shift from reacting emotionally to trusting a broader process, where delays and closures are interpreted not as punishment, but as guidance that filters out misaligned paths and prepares space for more meaningful outcomes that align with personal growth, discipline, and readiness, gradually shaping a more focused, aware, and strategically aligned way of thinking that influences future decisions and perspectives without relying solely on immediate appearance or temporary desire, while building a stronger sense of internal direction that is less dependent on external approval or visible certainty. In conclusion, this entire message reveals a deeper truth that most people only understand after they have walked through their own seasons of pressure, change, and uncertainty. Before real wealth, success, or transformation ever appears in a person's life, life first begins a silent process of preparation. It speaks through obstacles that repeat, through isolation that strengthens focus, through an inner voice that refuses to stay quiet, through the breaking of comfort, through an unexplainable hunger for growth, and through doors that close without warning. None of these moments are random, they are signs of transition, carefully shaping a person into someone capable of handling what is coming next. What feels like delay is often development, what feels like loss is often protection, and what feels like confusion is often alignment taking place beyond what the eyes can see. The journey is not designed to break a person, but to build discipline, awareness, patience, and inner strength that cannot be created in comfort. When understood correctly, every challenge becomes a teacher, every setback becomes a redirection, and every silence becomes preparation for a stronger future. Those who recognize these signs early learn to trust the process instead of resisting it, and in doing so, they grow into the version of themselves that is ready for greater responsibility, opportunity, and abundance. Good luck to everyone who is currently in their season of transformation. Trust what you are going through, stay patient with your process, and keep moving forward even when things do not make sense yet. Your journey is shaping you in ways you cannot see right now, but one day it will all connect clearly, and you will understand why everything had to happen the way it did.